The following is a conversation with Richard Parizer, a piano teacher, a graduate of entertainment management, and the keyboardist for the pop and synth-rock band Robot Nature. Richard talks about the importance of music theory for pop artists, music as a language, going across the country, his band, fostering relationships with industry contacts, and his definition of talent. For those just tuning in to Pepe and Ybra for the first time, I'm Pepe, aka Joanna Glass, and Ybra, aka Abe Perez, is my bandmate, and we are professional musicians who play in a two-piece rock band called Glass Spirits. This podcast will have guests who are musicians or professionals in the music and entertainment business. They'll have music tips, discuss issues in the music industry, what inspires them, and their creative process. Our current schedule will be to publish each episode every week. We have all the episodes filmed and in the can, so you'll definitely get 12 episodes, 1 episode a week. If we get a positive response, we'll have a second season, so make sure you like, comment, rate, and review this podcast. The theme of this season is Voyager. Many of our guests have come from all over the world, or they're transplants from across the country. And the voyage doesn't have to be a physical one. Many of the voyages are emotional and spiritual as well. We'll also put timestamps in the description and add show notes. If you enjoy this podcast, subscribe on YouTube, give it 5 stars, and leave a good review on Apple Podcast. Support us on Patreon, and connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or our website, pepeandybra.com. Now, without further ado, here is our conversation with Richard Parizer. This is another episode of Pepe and Ybra. I'm really excited about our next guest. He is the keyboardist of this amazing band. They're going to be exploding all over the place. They're called Robot Nature, and our guest is Richard Parizer. And, well, first of all, before we invite him in and get his story, I just want to provide some context. I was on Facebook scrolling. I love checking out awesome bands, and I saw this video and I heard violin and it sounded amazing. And I basically saw this band with this violinist just playing this amazing tune, and I was entranced, and I was like, this is amazing. I immediately shared it with my bandmate Abe Perez of our band Glass Spirits, and I was like, and he was like, yeah, they kick ass. And so I found them on social media. I added all the members right away. And whenever our band had something like a video or any other kind of content, I'd share it. And Richard, who I have with me here, he's commented back, took the time to do that, and said some very specific nice things about our band. And I was just like, man, you know, these guys are so nice too. And now that we have Abe and I have this podcast, I'm like, okay, he's got to be like one of the first people I have to invite, because he's just so nice and friendly. And here he is, Richard Parizer. Hi, Richard.
Hey, Joanna. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Appreciate you thinking of me, thinking of us. And thank you again for, being a fan, and, and likewise from fan to fan as well of your, and it's amazing to see and hear people like yourself that you really don't even know. And then all of a sudden you get to know them because they appreciate what you're doing musically, which is, I think, why, so many of us are on this journey. Because it's like, not only, I don't know about you, but for me, I have to do this. I have to do music. It's very much been instilled in my bloodline since I was very, very young. But at the end of the day, it's so rewarding to see and hear from people like yourself, that just tuned in and out of nowhere, that's some of the most, I think, the reason why we do this, right, Joanna?
Yeah, for sure. And, and it's not just in terms of like oh, let's just be nice to everyone because you don't want to burn bridges or opportunities. And it's just like, the older I get, I just love the idea of community, and then just like musical friends getting together and supporting each other, and just going
Absolutely.
to each other's shows or playing shows together. I mean, that's, how I feel. Not everything needs to be this cutthroat competition that people try to make things out to be like in the media with other bands. But I also love that you play keyboards, and because I also play keyboards in my band. Oh, there we go. And because when I see other rock bands live and they have a keyboardist, and it's like, man, turn the keyboards up. It's like it's like the sound engineers like a guitarist or drummer or something. So there might be bias there. And
Yeah.
yeah, I just, you have such an amazing story. The theme of this podcast season is called Voyager, because I'm finding from doing research, a lot of our guests are, you know, um, immigrants, or however you want to call
Transplant.
it. Or transplants too. And so, yeah, please, if you don't mind, tell us your story and, how you started back in Maryland.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you just named it. I was born and raised in Maryland, and as I mentioned just a moment ago, music really was a part of my bloodline in a way. Not only bloodline, but my mom played, but she played in a different way. She didn't play professionally or anything. She just kind of took lessons growing up, and she would go on the piano every now and then and show me what it was like to actually be experimentative, to be creative. But
Mm.
but basically, my mother noticed me go on this play school piano that she got my brother, my older brother, that is, when I was about 2 years old. That I would be very experimental. I would be pushing one key at a time. She described to
Mm.
me. She noticed that and immediately took me into a program, a Suzuki program, if you're familiar with it. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how it all started. It was about 3 years old, and in that Suzuki program, there was just rhythmic exercises and just subtleties on a keyboard or things like that. Of course, I really don't remember that part of it, but it wasn't until about 6.5, 7 years old I actually started taking private lessons, and that's when things started to change. And I had an interesting sort of, I think, introduction to lessons. I actually said private lessons, but let me correct myself. It was actually a group class. The very first experience I had with piano or keyboarding was a group class that my mom brought me to. But then I started taking private lessons when I was right about 8 years old, or 7.5 or so. And that's when things did start to change for me even better or even greater, because I had an amazing, amazing, and I'll call him a mentor, but private piano teacher that just really embraced all musical aspects. It wasn't one of those kind of teachers that was, slap the wrist, we're
Yeah.
playing classical music. It was all of the above. He really channeled the student and what that student, or what he saw in that student. And he also noticed one other big thing, which I don't know that, I thought everyone did it at the time, but
Mm.
apparently I was wrong. He noticed that I wouldn't stay on the page. I'd go
Mm.
off the page, meaning like I had to be creative with the song. For some reason, I felt like I could do things that weren't necessarily notationally there. You know what I mean? And I didn't realize what I was doing, but I was embracing the science of music. And I saw one of your questions later on. I think it mentioned about music theory. We'll get to that later. But anyways, so yeah, so music started for me at that age, and I just fell in love. You see the saxophone in the background. That was a big
Mhm.
part of my past too. My parents had to ask me to stop practicing sometimes. They really did. I mean, because they were watching a show and they were like, Rich, you just
Mm.
were playing, a half hour before this. And I was like, well, I want to go do this thing I just thought of.
Oh, that's awesome.
But it was great. No, they were so encouraging, though. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, my parents are, certainly role models, and they always encouraged me to do the things I love. And that's, but then I started to get more serious about it, I would say, actually, come the end of high school. And that is that
Mm.
we have I was pretty lucky. My high school was pretty musically involved and inclined in the state. We had definitely one of the better music programs. And it is partly due to the fact that we had this incredible show that we put on called Rock and Roll Revival. It was Rock and Roll Revival, meaning we kind of revived old rock tunes, you know what I mean? From dating back to the 60s or even the 50s, and then 70s and 80s. And at that point, we were kind of into the 90s or later 90s. So it was
nice.
It wasn't so much 90s, but, you know, definitely things from the 80s, 70s, and 60s. We were reviving old sort of tunes and whatnot. But part of that, so now going back to what I was saying, the students kind of had the power. As a keyboardist, it was one of our jobs to put the charts in front of the rest of the musicians. Because keyboardists kind of, they had that theory background typically, and sometimes guitarists, sometimes drummers too. But it was our job to put together the charts for the band. Now, for the band to play, you know what I mean? And that included chord charts for that.
Oh, wow.
You know, I'm kind of referring to.
So you were arranging right away.
So I didn't realize I was arranging, the truth be told. And I put it together because, you know, you kind of had to do those things with your ear. So that taught me to play with a band. That taught me to arrange, like you said, and the importance of the arrangement, or the importance of how to arrange and what that is sort of scientifically, musically. And after that show, I started to get the music feeling of like, maybe I should do this professionally. But I still didn't actually try to forego music professionally at that point. I went to school right into the engineering program, studying undefined engineering at that point, or undecided engineering at that point. And eventually I would, because 9/11 was right my freshman year of college. Whoops, I just dropped my age, I guess.
It's all good.
But my freshman year of college was 9/11, and that was a big deal, of course, especially on the East Coast, I think all around the nation, really. And because of that, I went into fire protection engineering, which was very interesting at the time. But it was 2 years into college that I realized, wait, you know, I'm in the wrong spot. You know, I love music. This is what I want to do. So that's where it was come sophomore year of college that I realized I switched over to music, or really entertainment management, because it was almost too late to join a technical music program at that point, unless I wanted to go to school for another 5 years or so. And I kind of didn't. I wanted my degree and get out. And I kind of had this vision. I wanted to come to LA. I drove out to LA literally right after college, about 1 year after college. I was teaching piano, so I saved up a bit, and I drove out to LA with my cousin. Actually, he joined me, thankfully. And we did it. When I say drive out, I mean, we got in my Hyundai Accent at the time, barely got up the road when we were in Colorado. I don't know if you've ever driven in Colorado, but I had my keyboard in the back and suitcases and, you know, my whole life with me at that point. And we were like, you know, full throttle, you know, going up those Colorado hills at 35 miles an hour, and trucks were passing me at that point. I'll always remember that part of the but you talk about voyaging, and that was actually a voyage, you know, for me. I literally spent 3 days, or 2 nights, 3 days traveling across the country with that music bone, and knowing I was going to end up in LA, you know.
You just mentioned, you know, being in school and theory a little bit, and I'll just provide like a little background on myself, because I did go to a music conservatory for college. It wasn't a conservatory at the time, it later became one, for violin performance, and it was kind of geared to like eventually get you to audition for an orchestra. And 1 year into it, I was like, man, there's all these methods and theory classes. I just had this other side of me that was into music programming, like synth programming and composition, and that I found more fulfilling at that time. And then, you know, and I was at this school, and I was like, man, I just don't see the application right now. And I was, you know, like 18, and I was very impatient. You know, this doesn't apply to me, whatever. I dropped out, and then like I regretted it, and then my family was like, why'd you drop out of college? And then I re-enrolled, and then I was like, okay, yeah, I need to like listen to myself, and I dropped out again. But then I enrolled into like a different program that was like religious studies. It's 1 year, so I can just get that degree and no one will yell at me or whatever. But I know at that time I just had this fire that I was like not putting my energy in the right place. But now I'm in my 30s, I'm older, and I look back and I was like, you know, Yes, time is very important, especially in the entertainment industry. Like, youth is considered to be a commodity. It was just like, man, if I just took that 1 year to like bunker down, learn some theory, it's then it would have been just like a tool today. So now that you have been teaching piano, what are your thoughts, or messages to students who are so eager, who want to disregard theory, or just anything? What are your thoughts?
Sure, sure. And just to relate real fast, I can relate to the dropout story because at that point I mentioned when I was switching, I actually wanted to drop. I told my parents I want to drop and I want to go out to LA. That's what I want to do. I know I want to do music, but they encouraged me. They said, why don't you, it's a full ride. You're not spending money, just do it.
Yeah.
And finish it because you probably won't regret it. And I was only a couple of years away at that point as is. But I can relate to the feeling of
Yeah.
like, where do I go? Should I drop? I wanted to. I really did. But anyways, going into the question, so you're talking music theory. Now, I like you mentioned, I'm a piano teacher as well. I was very fortunate when I was pretty young, right before college, actually right during college. I had a close friend of the family asked me to teach their children. Now, I'd never done it before. And I said, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? They said, well, I think you'll figure it out. We love the way you play and we just really like you. And I think you should give it a shot. So I didn't realize they were really trying to encourage me to do this. They kind of probably saw it in me. And that's when it started. And some of those students have gone on to graduate, ironically, from Stanford and UCLA. Those my very first two students, both in California. It's funny enough. And actually, one of them did pursue music in the end, which I really think is amazing. It's one of the greatest, reasons why I think I do this, why I even teach still, because passing on and paying it forward is so rewarding and so important to me. But anyways, talking about theory, I think it matters to the individual. I mean, I could break this down to two, I think, answers. I'll go into the one immediate answer, which I don't necessarily agree with, which I kind of learned later, especially playing with a lot of guitarists. They don't necessarily know music theory. It's all by ear. It's all like, I love communicating music theory. I can't argue how important it is that it's a language, and I think everyone should learn it, especially if they're passionate about music. But not everyone does. And I don't want to name any names necessarily, but I work closely to individuals that just really don't believe in music theory in a way, meaning they don't want to learn it. They think it'll cloud their creativity. And I have an argument against that, but I respect their decision on that. I respect that yes, learning theory can kind of, you might feel like you get put into a box or put yourself into a box that can't go outside of it. You can't be creative. You can't do something new, if you will. But I don't think we're trying to reinvent the wheel here. With music theory, I think there is a science behind. No, I should say, and you can argue with me if you want. I know there is a science to music. I know that there is this sort of under this realization of what I refer to as like the musical formula. And I don't want to get into this argument or this debate on, you can't put a formula in music, because in some ways that's true. You can't just put a formula on creativity. But what you can do is you can definitely put a formula on the basic foundations, or the basic, let's say, skeleton, and what makes it a piece of music, even going into any genre, classical, jazz. I mean, it might even argue minimalism too as well. But certainly pop music fits in this, all sides of pop music, whether even reggae, all the branches, all the genres as well. They all kind of follow this pretty simple concept, and that is that music is built of two parts, really, and technically a third, but I'll throw the two important parts: a chord progression and a melody. A melody that fits on top of that, or let's say is accompanied by that chord progression. And we can refer to the chord progression as an arrangement, right?
And those two requirements are what is needed, like the bare minimum to have a song copyrighted. So
exactly. You're right. Not only is it the science, but you're right. But actually, what's interesting? Well, it depends on the copyright, but you're absolutely right.
Right.
I'm on the side of arrangement matters a lot too, but technically there are two sides of copyright. But when it comes to a song, like a pop song, for example, in a court of law, it's lyrics, which is copyrightable, and then of course the melody of those lyrics. Those are the two unique properties of any given song, and the rest is free domain. And that's kind of sad, actually. That's a whole nother conversation, I'm sure. We're years into a whole nother conversation. And I only say that's kind of sad because I think arrangers sometimes get the bottom end of it. You know what I mean? They don't get the credit that they deserve, because I think it really starts with how you might arrange something or how you might put a chord progression together, because it's not even just the simplicity of a chord progression. It's also the dynamics, the articulation, the timing, everything matters. And that's the third part. I mentioned that there was two parts to the formula, but the unannounced third part is the fact that everything fits into a rhythm. You know what I mean? Everything kind of has a rhythmic structure to it. And that is also what truly makes, I think, a song unique, and then leads into a conversation like a motive, which, is very much a classical term, or at least stemmed from that. But that's why a classical piece or any piece of music could have the same progression. I know we all have heard about the progression of 1,000, that creates one progression that creates 1,000 different songs. And the reason why that's even possible, and sometimes we can't even realize that we don't realize that it's the same progression, is because of that rhythmic differences. Those rhythmic differences, the part that really makes it unique for each song. But the overall argument is in a simple answer: music theory matters. To me, it matters. It drove me early on, before I knew what it was, before I started to understand it as a science, like I mentioned, and then realizing later on that, I can take this and use it as a tool to help me arrange and write, and ultimately, put things together for a band, or for also I compose music for film and TV, and anything that I'm being involved with from a project standpoint musically. So I think it really has helped me, and driven me. And like I was saying before, it's a language. There is a language, terminology that we would use to communicate this musical. Well, I said it already, language. And a lot of people don't, like I was saying a moment ago, a lot of people don't know the language. And it always has been a crutch for me in bands, especially too, working with other musicians, the ones that didn't necessarily take the time to put the labels and whatnot. They don't tell me what they are. And now I'm just relying on my ear, which is okay. And I don't mind it, but I'm actually the kind of player that loves to just give me one statement about it. Oh, it's in the key of E. Done.
Yeah,
now I
or
can
like
figure it
1,
out.
4, 5.
Exactly. Well, give me that. Well, that's even better. You know what I mean? Because that's isolating the information for me. Key of E 1, 4, 5. Great. Now I know exactly where to put everything. I can immediately isolate what to expect. You know what I mean? And I can probably figure it out like right in the moment. Whereas if it's not the case, I don't necessarily consider myself to have the best ear by any means. I've met some incredibly talented people that just blow me away in that way. But at the end of the day, it is, I don't want to just rely on my ear. I want to be able to rely on everything, the whole package. And part of that package, whether you like it or not, is music theory. So there you go.
That's amazing, that kind of talk that you just had there. And I mean, it's, you say it's a language, and I look back and say, oh, it's a tool, and we have a choice on whether we want to use a tool or not. It's like, okay, I can choose to use this, microphone that's thousands of dollars, or sometimes I do opt to go for the SM58 because it's more appropriate for this punk song I'm recording, like whatever,
or 57.
I look at it now as a tool, and I wish I could have gone back and just sat my ass down for 1 year. But you said a couple amazing things. Oh, well, it was all amazing, but I really love, language, that you saw it as a language, like music theory as another language, and that's, I feel like that's what kind of music is about. In the previous session I had with a vocal coach, and I was giving her like this thought experiment. Okay, you have worked with so many students that want to sing like jazz, rock, classical, pop, whatever. What is like the one underlying piece of advice you can give to singers all around the world, irregardless of the genre? And she said something that was like, at the heart of it, no matter how you're singing or what it is you're singing, make sure you're communicating the message you want to communicate, whatever that message is. And so I just kind of connect that with what you meant about this language. Like the music itself, the content is a message, and the tools and the theory and the instrumentation, that's language as well. So yeah. And also the other thing that you mentioned, that you have thoughts about people try or can make formulas out of music. I mean, that's essentially what music theory is, or observations and practices now just being retaught. And I feel like even nowadays, there's so many music composition formulas and apps for people. Even in a way, Spotify tries to formulate, and they analyze thousands, tens of thousands of pieces of music. And they have their own formula of analyzing your music as soon as you upload it. So I just don't know if you had any other thoughts about that, especially being in a commercial band.
Yeah. I mean, I think you kind of touch on the idea that in one hand, we want to be original and we want to be unique. We want to be creative and want to create one of our own, like I said, original in our own sense. But on the other hand, you kind of touched on Spotify playlisting. It's so important to find a playlist you fit into, because it actually could be hard to break through in a way or get your music heard. And I think that's the goal of most musicians. It's hard if you don't fit in a category, if you can't be somewhat categorized or put yourself in a sort of specified or, genre or even group of genres, fusion of genres. But at the end of the day, it's so important that that we find different characteristics of other music out there that we can see in ourselves, as well as, of course, embrace our own originality, our own creativity. But I kind of said it before. I don't think we should, as musicians, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You date all the way back to some of the pop. Before there was radio and all this and discs and everything like that, and record players. There was classical music. That was the popular music of the world. That was considered, and a pop music artist back during that time of the early 1800s, late 1700s, mainly. And by the way, the piano's only, the piano was invented in 1700. It's not that old, technically. but anyways, post 1700, before that, there were harpsichords and things like that. But that's a whole nother story. Anyways, in that era, and then dating into the 1800s, the pop artists were classical composers like a Beethoven or a Mozart. And those guys, they were helping to pave the way and invent what we even still do to this day. I mean, if you want some good influences, definitely check out some Mozart, definitely check out some Beethoven. And I can definitely go down a whole great list of further ones, but those are kind of the pinnacle names that a lot of people know. But at the end of the day, I mean, like I said, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. You can definitely find characteristics, I can't say the word, of your music, certainly from Beethoven, certainly from Mozart. I know I do. And I don't try to fight it either. I want, I embrace that. I want to see those connections, and I want to make those connections. So important. But yeah, going back to it, mentioning like Spotify, for example, it's important to be able to find other groups, artists, solo, out there that you can relate to and maybe even collaborate with, that's another conversation, I imagine. Yeah. But yeah, so hopefully that kind of touches on it.
Yeah. Great points. And you also mentioned the importance and the influence, the prevailing influence of classical music. I mean, because so many people are out there like, oh, it's, boring, and it makes me fall asleep or whatever. But I mean, one instance, for example, the melody of Celine Dion's All By Yourself is from Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2.
Nice observation there.
Yeah. And so, someone else pointed that out to me, and I was like, oh yeah. And then John Williams or any kind of Marvel or DC movie soundtrack that fits within like the classical music realm. So yeah, there's so many applications, it's like its own medium in itself.
And
So,
John Williams got famous off the 145. You mentioned 145. I mean, he
mhm.
really did. He got famous off the 145. Once again, stating the point, let's not try to reinvent the wheel, just find unique ways of recreating the 145. Not to get into the technical side of what 145 means, but I think you know what I mean. I mean, John Williams, I can probably whip something out here, but like, some of the, you can actually hear it in his music, in multiple scores, totally different movies, like Star Wars to Back to the Future. I mean, two totally different movies, two totally different concepts. You can actually find almost exact imitation of the music from both of those movies, because there's a character behind that. There's a kind of a genre behind that. But yes, I would argue that I think film composition is our current day sort of like classical approach, or
Yeah.
let's say even classical pop stars, guys like John Williams and so on.
Mm. Oh yeah. I mean, and I just love the fact that Hans Zimmer played at Coachella that one year. That
Hans Zimmer is another one worth mentioning. And he actually, I learned a lot about Hans Zimmer, and I respect the man a lot, actually. I know some people might argue me on that, but only because he did a couple of things that are also as important with music. Collaboration. I mean, he is one of the kings of collaboration. He makes sure that he's collaborating with others, or at least utilizing other pieces, other people for work that he doesn't have to just do himself. And he's not really well known, believe it or not, for being a arranger or an orchestrator, for that matter. He has a lot of individuals that he works with, or even works above in a way that he assigns these important parts of putting a movie together. Some people argue he's the best sound designer of all time. You know what I mean? And that's a really important part of music too, which is basically finding the right place, the right sound for the piece of art, which in his case is a film score attached to a film. Remember, film scores are very visual, right?
Yeah.
You're supposed to take music and make it visual. And that's not the easiest thing to do, believe it or not. But he does it quite well. I must hand it to him. And then I can probably name a couple others. But
Yeah, I mean, no, I know what you mentioned earlier, that, some people like to argue who like the best film composer is. I mean, like, why just choose one? There's so many good ones out there. And we touched back on this theme of competitiveness and community, and going to LA. I know you had your cousin next to you, but did you establish connections beforehand, or you were just like blindly going, or what was, how did that go about, and how did you get from moving to LA to making your connections that eventually led you to Robot Nature?
Okay, so where do I start? Well, in Maryland, I joined a band when I was in college, something I didn't technically mention, but I joined my first band. I had good friends of the family that were still in high school, and they were in a high school band, and they asked me to be the keyboardist, even though I was already in college at that time. And I felt honored to be even asked. That being the case, I said yes, and I learned what it was like to play with others, outside of that rock and roll revival thing I mentioned about. And that really inspired me and said, oh man, I love playing in bands. I love the feeling of being on stage, playing for a crowd, no matter how big the crowd was. It could be 2 people, it could be 10 people, it could be 100,000, whatever. But, it was just, it's the rush. I think you can relate to that, Joanna, a bit. And it's a rush I enjoyed. I really did enjoy performing. It's also a part of like kind of who I am as a musician, because not all musicians like to perform necessarily, but I'm definitely one of them that enjoys performing. So I after joining my first band, great experience, but I knew I was moving out to LA, like I kind of mentioned before. And I had certainly family as well just pull me aside and say, Rich, I really think you should go for it. I could really hear this stuff in a movie, you know what I mean? And I got that a lot. And I'm also one of those guys, when you see a piano, you just got to jump on it if it's available, if you're allowed to. And and when we go to hotels, I got to travel when I was younger, and when we would go out, wherever we went, if there was a piano, I had to make sure I played it. I didn't have to play the piano, but I was a kind of a young kid, and 14-year-old, 13-year-old playing this piano, and they would say, "Oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. What is this?" And I'd say, "Oh, I was just making it up." And they were like, "Oh wow, I could really hear that in a movie." And I just kept hearing that, consistently. And I was like, well, maybe there is something there. And it just kind of inspired me, like maybe I should go for it. Maybe I should try to become a film composer. That's what brought me to LA. That was a big inspiration on myself, to go out to LA, and that is to chase the film composition dream. But another reason that brought me to LA was my cousin. I had a cousin who started a big sample sound business. He founded it himself. It was called P5 Audio. And I talked to him before coming out to LA. Actually, I stayed in his house for a couple of weeks before I decided to move out here as well, one summer before I moved. And he kind of told me, he said, I've got some work that you could definitely take on. I can't guarantee anything, so don't come out with any guarantees. I'm not giving you a full-time job or anything, but I definitely got some things I can introduce you to, and I think I can help you a little bit as well. So that also was another inspiration for me coming out to LA, because I had something to do musically, which was create sample sounds for producers to use, like loop sets, if you're familiar with that sector of things, or that side of the business, and allowed me to be a guy who would also pull in other producers. And that was great too, because that opened the door to meet some really cool producers and give them an opportunity, if they wanted it, to join this company and to do work and get royalties every month for doing so. So I actually got to meet some really cool producers, some of which became ultra famous. I'm not going to mention names, but well, unless you want me to, I guess it doesn't matter. But
if you feel comfortable and they'll be okay with it.
I'll mention one person that really inspired me going down the route. I met him early on. I'm not super friends with him. It was just an acquaintance from doing that marketing angle for producers for my cousin's business. His name is Jay White, excuse me, blanking. And Jay White ended up becoming the main producer for Cardi B. So he really, it was a very impressive story, to say the least. But anyways, so I got to meet really cool guys and bump elbows with that. So that was a good way to get introduced to California as well. I didn't feel like I was just, swimming around blindly. But touching on what you said before, I also knew I needed another aspect. I needed to be in a band. So I was seeking that. Right when I got out to LA, I was lucky. I met this guy across the street from the first apartment I moved into. And we just kind of hit it off. He was a rapper, hip hop. He was into hip hop, and he was very into music. And I was like, oh, I'm a keyboardist, and we just kind of hit it off. And he happened to know a ton of people. Like he would just, he'd introduce me to all sorts of people, which I thought was awesome. And there was a lot of story there. But he introduced me. I told him, I said, I want to form a band. I really want to form a band. He's like, I got to introduce you to my producer. He also plays drums. And he introduced me to him. His name is Jesse. I still work with him today. I'm still in a band today with him. We've been going for like over a decade strong now. It's
wow.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a brotherhood in a way. And of course we are like brothers, we get at each other's throats too, but but no, it's great. I even lived with him for 3 years. That's besides the point. But anyway, so he when I met him, I told him I have this vision. I really want to, form a band. He had the same vision. He wanted to form a band too. So he started showing me music that interested him, that he wanted to do. He was very into like this trip hop thing, which was like
Portishead or like.
Thank you, Portishead. That's exactly the one I was thinking of. Yeah. Okay. So Portishead was kind of an influence, but also the biggest influence, the group he showed me was a group called 07. You ever heard of 07?
No, I haven't.
So 07, very, very cool group from Europe. They also were into like the trip hop genre, touching on, but you're going to like this. They were like kind of a producer crew or / instrumental crew that would invite different lead singers. Oh, nice. So they kind of had multiple lead singers, not just one necessarily, into the studio, and they would do albums and everything. And their main person was Sia. If you know who Sia. So Sia is, she got birthed into the musical world through a band called 07. So
Okay.
that was a big influence on us. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. I love this music. I love what
Yeah.
they're doing. I'm totally down to do something like this. So him and I got together, the drummer, Jesse, that is, we got together, just him and we started jamming just drums and keyboards. And right from day one, there was a cool chemistry. And we said, oh, good, we can do this, So we formed a band. We formed a band called End of Ever. And like I was saying, I knew I had to have that a part of my California journey, a part of my musical journey and into LA and California. So yeah, so that's that's where it kind of started for me band wise, and and it hasn't stopped. But as you already know, because that's kind of how we met, which is great. And then also I still go for the composition side of things too. I do compose for film and TV. I've had a lot of different stuff placed on all sorts of networks, but yeah,
Yeah.
so that's that probably answers that question.
Oh, well, that's a great story that had all these like interesting side adventures with artists that became popular later, which
Yep.
is so amazing to hear. And I'm just wondering, I know you mentioned this off air or off the record.
Totally.
Um like how did you get from this band and into like collaborating and being part of Robot Nature? What can you tell our audience about that?
Oh, sure. I'll give you the little backstory on that. So I just mentioned the band End of Ever.
Mhm.
In that band, we actually had a few different members, but we had a female fronted. It was a female fronted band, and it was Jesse, the drummer, and
Yeah.
myself, the keyboardist, and then this guy named Michael Sklena. He was our bass player.
Mhm.
We also went through a couple of different bass players in that band, but he was our main guy, and our lead singer, Danny, was her name. Amazing friend and amazing musician talent, amazing talent all around. She also played music as well as sang and wrote lyrics and everything. But she felt like she wanted to go into more musical theater, and it just kind of changed a little bit, changed some course and go into a different direction, maybe settle down a little bit more. She did get married not long after.
Mhm. Yeah.
But that left the three of us, bass player, drums and keyboards. We were left without a singer, and we were kind of left in the thought process of, do we continue? Do we go for something else? And we sat down with our managers at the time, and our manager said to us, well, you guys have something that you wouldn't believe how many people are looking for in a city like Los Angeles, or a place like Los Angeles. And that is, you guys have chemistry, you have background, you have history, and you guys can play music. You guys can sit in, on a lot of different, musical journeys or, aspects, genres. But so they said, this doesn't have to be the stopping point. It's up to you, obviously, but it doesn't have to be the stopping point. About a month after that sort of breakup, after our lead singer left us, we were introduced by our manager to an individual named Deepak, who is a
Mhm.
lead singer of Robot Nature. And I was telling you off camera that we just, hit it off right away.
Yeah.
Tell you how much we hit it off. There's some amazing synchronicity here. Deepak and I found out the very first day we met that we're both from Maryland. We both went to the same college. We were both there at the same time. Probably crossed paths in the
Whoa.
musical scene
It's
in Maryland,
crazy.
not California, in Maryland. And
Wow.
you just knew it. You just knew at that point. There's too much synergy, too much serendipity here. Why wouldn't we try to put this together? Why wouldn't we try to make this work? And I actually said to the guys, because they weren't totally sold on it yet. They wanted to know that it was, could be serious. And by the guys, I mean Jesse and Mikey necessarily. But we had met with Deepak. We had just a meet and greet at Jesse's studio. That very next day, I went over to Deepak's house. He showed me this amazing performance of
Mhm.
him on a looper pedal, and he would be able to just put the whole band together, right? Just a band of one. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
One man band. And and if you're familiar with like the looping, looper
Yeah.
pedal and how that puts together and everything, he would be with his violin, his guitar, and of course his vocals / beatboxing ability as a instrument. So he would put together, he kind of, put together his songs, if you will, all right in front of me on this with the looper pedal, and be able to just give me a full-on performance, and it was just me and him. And like I was saying before, it didn't matter if there's one person out listening or if there's 100 or thousands people listening. You know, he played, and you could see his passion, and it really inspired me. And I really enjoyed the material too, you know, because he was starting to show me, because he's also a producer, and he was showing me the material, you know, that he was working on even currently and before. And I was like, oh my gosh, we could do this. And I said to the guys, I said, you know, I'm going to roll with Deepak. I think no matter whether you guys want to roll with or not, because I could see the vision and I really love it. And, you know, but I knew that these guys they wouldn't let it go. There was no way they weren't going to be interested. At least I felt at the time. Anyway, so we set up a rehearsal within the same week. And actually also, let me go back a little bit. Deepak and I said it, we got together every day for like 3, 4, 5 days straight. And we put together what I said would help us just jump right in. Because I come from a background of programming, and not like computer programming, but like music programming, which is, you know, making sure backing tracks run accordingly, make sure they're synced, in-ear monitors, the whole deal, even monitoring yourself, setting up. I use MainStage, if you're familiar with that. And I said, we got to implement your stuff into this program, into this way of doing things, because that's what I did in End of Ever. So after doing that, we organized everything so we could jump into a rehearsal with the other guys and just be pretty much ready to go. And part of the reason why was we had a gig in 2 weeks.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, we had never met. We had never performed together. And we had a gig in 2 weeks. So
Why the rush?
Why the rush? You know, you get out of a band, you can probably relate to this, but you get out of a band, or you have a crossroad in a way, and you're like, you don't want to stop. You want to, I mean, we were performing on the Hollywood Strip, and, you know, it was fun. Like, you know, I didn't want that to just go away.
Just to get out there and.
Yeah, I wanted to be right back into it. You know what I mean? And I didn't want the starting of a new band to just slow us down, especially if you can do what I was talking about before, because you can hit the ground running, and that's what we did. Our first rehearsal, we totally hit the ground running. I mean, literally song number 1, it was like we were together for 2 years already. The chemistry was there. I mean, it actually blew Deepak away. He was like, this was like literally a plug and play for us. How could I not take you guys on? Because it was a choice of his too. He didn't just, you know, jump in and say, hey, we're a band now. This was, just to go back a little bit, this was also a project of his. He created a solo project called Robot Nature. And it was a decision to make it a band. And I mean, it was a band decision, because the other guys weren't necessarily, you know, they said, should we rename it? Should we do the bit? And I know Deepak was very insistent, like, we don't need to rename, we don't need to what's the word? We don't need to try to reinvent this, because this is already working. And if you guys can be convinced of it, you know, let's do it, you know? So it wasn't set in stone, but I think we all kind of knew. I knew. I was like, no, I think this is going to be the image. This is the band. This is the name. And my manager told us something I'll never forget too. Let me see if I want to get this right. A name does not make the band. The band makes the name. So, or you can replace name with brand.
Like Hoobastank, right?
Exactly. A lot of people use that as an example. Like, you know what I mean? Anyway, so that, you know, that sat with us. He said, it doesn't matter what you guys call yourself. That was a convincing point for some of the other guys that were kind of on the fence. Should we call it Robot Nature? And I was all on board, because I love that vision. I love futurism. I love keyboarding. I love the technology side of things. And that was part of the whole image of what we wanted to embrace. So we put it together. And I mentioned that we had a gig in 2 weeks, about 2-3 weeks, because our manager who put us together, who introduced us all, he and became our, you know, manager of the new group. He works for CD Baby, disc makers and all that. And they put on like an industry night. And he said, you guys could perform at the industry night, and
Nice.
this would be your debut. And we were like, we got to do it. You know what I mean? So we had an immediate goal. We knew we had to work hard, work fast. And that really helps you, by the way, when you're forming a band. I don't know, for anyone out there inspiring to form a band, have a goal right away, have an immediate goal to just go for. Because once we had that goal, we knew we had to get it, and we did. I mean, that first performance, that's what really set us off right away. It was, I mean, we got really great crowd response. It was actually a decent crowd, even though it was our first gig, because it was an industry night. And they just kind of said, don't quit, do this. You guys got something, because it was we announced it as our debut show and everything. So it just started there. And even at that show, we already had other gig offers. We were like, oh, can you come play this? Can you come play that? Nice. and that got us really busy. And I really consider it very, very fortunate. And I highly, highly recommend this to any brand new group. Take every gig you can, free or not. And I know that's a hard one, because that's a whole other topic in itself. You shouldn't necessarily devalue yourself as an artist, but as a new group that is trying to do one, I think, really important thing, build a fan base, take every gig, take every gig, embrace every gig, go for every gig, you know what I mean? And we were very lucky. I mean, we must have done 100 gigs our first year. Maybe it was 80 to 100 gigs our very first year, which if you kind of do the math on that, almost 2 a week, basically. And I think you touched on this, so I'll bring this from off camera too, but you had said, that you had seen a show, and then you had seen like us play all of a sudden, but
it was a post, a social media post, and I was like, hey, I wanted to come see you guys. How come you didn't put a Facebook event?
And I really appreciate that, actually, Joanne. And my response to that is that we didn't promote every gig, because actually we kind of said it in two parts. We had two sides of us. We had promoted gigs. The gig we had set ourselves to have 1 gig a month, at least 1 gig a month, that we were promoting. And part of the reason why is that, I don't know if you're kind of familiar with the Hollywood scene, but you technically aren't. You sign a contract sometimes that says you cannot take a gig in this area.
It's like a 25-mile radius, because they don't want you to dilute your fan base, right?
That's exactly right. And so we embraced that, as part of our formula, in a way, for gigging. And we would have a promoted gig every month, but then we would have like 4, 5, 6, 7 other gigs in the given month, you know what I mean, that we didn't promote, for partly that reason. And the other part, it was, we had oh man, what's the word? Residencies, and some of those residencies, it was just a weekly thing. We were going to be there. We're going to be at Skinny's in North Hollywood every week. And for those that were fans, they knew it. And for those that weren't fans, they were going to basically figure it out, because we did a lot of story posting. That's how you found out that we had a gig, and you didn't make it, because we had posted it as a story, basically. Kind of like a surprise pop-up almost. But yeah, no, I mean, it was fun. We really did hit the ground running, and it was the first 2 years was amazing for me, because I had never been in a band that had so much traction. I mean, there were some other pivotal moments, and that really reassured why this band could maybe do something,
So, something kind of came up where earlier you were talking about, people were like, okay, this is a good thing, don't quit. And I find that there's so much growth, personal and within the band wise, that happens over years. And then even before you joined Robot Nature, you and Jesse have been together like about 10 years already. And so my bandmate and we've definitely had our disagreements where it was like, geez, we just didn't even want to like be around each other, because that's what happens. Like, you spend a lot of time together, and people are people. Not everyone's going to agree on the same thing all the time. So we have this thing now where it's like, when we disagree to a point that we get emotional about it, we go, okay, let's cool off for a couple days, come back, and we just immediately say sorry. It doesn't matter whose fault it was, whatever. We just say sorry and kind of work it out and then move on. And it took us a while to get to that
I
point of
definitely
like
relate to that.
finding a protocol. But if you have any advice for anyone else who's like in a band or starting a band, and or just already in a band and wants to keep things together, like do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, yeah, you touched on it. I mean, they call it a band family. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it really is. It's there's two parts of it. You consider it a family, or especially in a group in a band setting, or you guys are kind of like in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That you always when you're in a serious relationship, you're going to have your differences, you're going to have your disagreements, and you got to work through them. And you said it already. I can totally relate. I mentioned about Jesse, him and I being brothers, basically, we kind of look a little alike, but with our hair, we really, what am I going to say? We kind of sometimes even leave things off the table, and sometimes it's not the greatest. You don't want to have it boiled up, but like, we don't even sometimes need to say sorry. We just know we're sorry. You're like, you just feel it, it's on to the next thing. You had a fight or a disagreement or a tickle, whatever, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because the next gig's coming and you got to be ready for it. And that's it. And, it's important. I mean, we've all heard the amazing horror stories. I don't know if anyone's out there watching Breaking the Band. It's a great show on, I think it's called Vice, Reels with a Z. Anyways, great show that goes into, when they say breaking the band, it's kind of like a pun or a double entendre. It's not breaking the band like how the band got famous. It's breaking the band like breaking up the band and how the band broke up. So, and look, I swear every band has these stories. Even a lot of people don't realize, even Aerosmith broke up, but they had one of the most amazing comebacks as a group. And not every band does have a comeback, but they did, you know what I mean? And when they came back, they got way bigger than they even were before. And that's a whole other story. But every band has to work through their familyhood, you know what I mean? Their differences, artistic differences, their disagreements on what to do, maybe on a promotion standpoint, or where they should go next, or what gig they should do or not do, you know what I mean? Where we should be focusing our time or not, So it's always going to be a constant, good debate. And those are good debates to have because you're going to understand it from multiple views, you know what I mean? You got to have, there's the advocate and then there's the devil's advocate. So it's like always important to have, a lot of decision making. To get to your goal, because you all have you all share that one bond, that one real inner goal, and that is to get your music out and heard by as many people possible. I feel like that's always, well, not maybe always, but certainly an underlying goal of so many. So yeah, I mean, that's a little bit of the advice. Band is a family, you just you have to work through things, you got to accept kind of what it is, and there are always going to be those differences. So.
Yeah, thanks for adding all those tips as well. And I kind of going back to like at the heart of what we do as musicians, and it's community. And like, even if you do get to your goal but everyone hates each other, that's not like a good thing, it doesn't, it kind of like defeats the purpose, because music can be healing, it can connect people. And then on that thought, since you've played so many shows, do you guys have like a pre-show ritual? Do you guys do anything for self-care? Okay, don't play 2 nights in a row or whatever it is, or don't eat this or whatever.
Not really at all. I mean, not to just shut it down, but no, we don't have any rituals. We jump on stage and we're ready to go. We I guess if anything, the ritual is us kind of like individually being in our own setup, in our own zone. We all have a job to do at that beginning. I mean, unless you have a lot of time. We've had a couple of gigs where we actually got the time. You got the big sound check. We played on some pretty big stages, very fortunate, you know what I mean? And in those settings, you actually, it's like a whole production crew, it's a whole thing that you get to kind of have time for. But anyways, and then there's the gig where you got to jump on stage and you plug and play basically. And we are not a plug and play band, by the way. We kind of got a lot of crap for that or slack for that, here and there, because it'd be better if we could set up maybe within 10 minutes. But it really did take us like 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes to set up, to really get it right, because of all the sound check, all the things that we had to do. We had a lot of intricacies. We have a lot of intricacies in our group, and it's got to be kind of set up right. Running things to the sound, the board, back to me, and then back to the board. And there's just a lot of different things that have to be set up with our group that it's tough. And then I've got to set up my, I don't have a lot of roadie crew right now, every now and then, but not really. No roadie crew. I'm setting up my keyboards myself. It's double rack. I play with a synthesizer as well as a keyboard that's attached to main stage, where I program a lot of my sounds or use other stock sounds that I reprogram and tweak. But it takes that sort of, time to get it all together, but we're usually ready to go. I mean, we don't have a ritual just because we have time, we just jump on. And every now and then there were the occasional gig where we kind of like got together and we did a little one for all kind of thing. I remember like before Burning Man, we got on the stage, we opened up for the Alan Parsons Project. You know that.
Awesome.
And Burning Man, and like, we knew that was a big gig for us. And as the gig got closer and closer, man, the night comes in. We were just at the break of dawn, and it was amazing, because as soon as night, have you ever been to Burning Man? And I had never been at the time before that, but as soon as the night time comes, the whole thing is lit up, and it just looks like this incredible festival of lights. And
I saw a video.
That is just, it's rewarding. I mean, it looks like there was 1 million people out there. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating. Like, you're playing on this stage, but you're seeing the distance from playing on the stage and whatnot. And it looks like 1 million lights, going off with a lot of different things happening. And anyway, so we kind of had probably a little ritual before that gig. We were, all kind of like a one for all kind of thing. I kind of remember, but there's no real like set ritual. We just
I asked because I tried to make like a fun and funny ritual for my bandmate and I. We've done this about twice. Well, this is what someone told me when I had this Japanese dish called tonkatsu. It's like this piece of pork cutlet or pork chop on rice with Japanese, a little bit of sauce and curry and seasoning on it. And so my Japanese friend told me that that's what sumo wrestlers eat before a match. And I'm like, oh, okay. So like, let's have like my bandmate and I try to do that. So a couple gigs, I try to find a Japanese restaurant, and he's like, oh man, Joanna, where you gotta get me to do all these crazy things? But you tried it, and we had a roadie like eat the tonkatsu too. So that way we just have the energy to like set up our gear, and we don't like to eat too close to the performance because it makes us like bloated, and it's not really good for singers either. So yeah, we did that twice, but hopefully when things open up we can continue that ritual. And I'm so glad that you touched up upon kind of setting up and the live aspect, and because I just remembered this great talk that Radiohead had on KROQ on the radio. They asked Radiohead, like, okay, you have created this album and the sky was the limit. These sounds were just so many different crazy sounds. How do you guys translate that into your live show? And they were just really frank. They were just like, we put on the record, we listen to it, and we become a Radiohead cover band.
Nice. That's interesting.
So you have 3 recordings out on Spotify and other streaming services right now. So what is the process from your recording to the stage? How do you guys agree on what's going to be done live?
Oh, that's a tough one. Well, what makes it easier for us, there's a couple differences, but like a lot of what you do here on the recording is kind of what you can hear live, because we are a band that really implements tracks, and we play to a click. We play to a structure, I should say. And that being the case, we definitely will sound, let's say, like our record, but a lot of people, our fans and our manager even, a lot of people will argue, you guys have a really cool chemistry on stage versus the studio. The studio, sometimes we get into our perfectionist modes. Everything must be locked in exactly the way it should be. But those mess ups, those like little behind the beat, the little moments of, Jesse maybe being a little behind, or more likely me, you know, being a little bit behind, you know what I mean? It actually creates this really, really amazing uniqueness, a unique sound that you know, that's what makes you special in a very much a live setting. And I think a lot of people kind of refer to us as more of a live band than even a studio band. Hope that kind of evolves through time. But you know, we try to capture that live sound on our record, but we do so much other additional production. We're our own producers as well as co-producers. But you know, we do so much additionally that you know, it does have some differences. But by the time we're done with the record, we take the record and we make sure we kind of readapt the live show with it. You know what I mean? So it's sometimes the record helped to kind of evolve or change our live show because we would implement new sounds that we hadn't implemented, you know, when we were playing live on the first time. Maybe some of the fans like this, some may not, I'm not sure, but like, but it's cool because it kind of keeps it evolving, you know, it keeps it moving. But yeah, we've, you know, overall, we've done a pretty good job of putting things on record. It's just, I'd like to, embrace that side of the industry a little bit more with this group. And I think we've got some cool things kind of happening right now that may put us in that limelight. So thinking that it could happen that way. So we'll see. We do have more records to be released. We have a master that is arguably our best song that we haven't released yet. And I guess, I mean, not for excuses sake, we were going to release it, but then the coronavirus kind of put a stall on that. And we just want to retrace our grounds and be ready more when I think the live scene comes back more full effect. So yeah, well, you know, we're excited. We're excited for the future, actually.
Yeah, I mean, you're not alone because a lot of studios are holding off on releasing certain things because they don't want to release something and it's a bust, you know. I completely understand. Timing is everything, and I think we mentioned off air, I was just talking about like how, for example, on the show The Voice, there was a contestant that walked off crying and Gwen Stefani ran after her and she was like, look, like with my band, No Doubt, we took 12 years to make it. And I had asked, what was one of the hard lessons that you've had to learn regarding the timing of success?
So, I mean, there's definitely a saying in the music world, it takes 10 years or let's say 5 to 10 years to make an overnight success. You know, we've heard that a million times. Like you see it all the time in the music industry. I'll mention like one good example, like Lil Nas. Lil Nas is probably a pretty good example of that because all of a sudden he was a #1 pop star. You know, I mean, Lil Nas X, that is, you know, with Old Town Road and whatnot. And yeah, he built a plan and it all worked, but he had been working for several years before that. I mean, you know, he had been working his craft and he was always, you know, trying to work up to that overnight success. And I think we all are in some respect. Like, and I think, you know, it'll be similar for Robot Nature. I mean, it really dates back before we even became a band, like I said, you know, with Deepak kind of having a vision too. So it is, you know, it definitely takes a lot of hard work and time to build the overnight success, and the overnight success is possible and almost happens more likely, you know, more often than not, you know, in a way, because all of a sudden you're on every radio station in the nation when you were struggling to get on, you know, a few. so yeah. I mean, it definitely happens in a way.
And you had also mentioned to me, we always have like these off air interesting conversations, but you know, if you don't mind, and you had said like a mentor had let go of someone who helped, and then that person who they let go of said, the same people you see on your way up. Well, I don't want to ruin the quote, but do you?
No, you can say it. I mean, I'm glad it touched you know, like it did for me. It did for you. It sounds like. I mean, yeah. Basically, you know, it's kind of a simple quote. Well, to touch on the story of my manager, mentor, business partner, all the above, you know, I definitely consider him a mentor because he tells me some really great stories from his past. And one of those stories is that he's been in a couple of signed bands. He's signed like 3 record deals himself, major record deals. And the first major record deal he signed, he had a good connection, a good relationship with their booking agent at the time. And he had said to this booking agent after he got the record deal, he said, "Hey, I don't need you anymore. We made it. We're going on to bigger and better things, and you're just not big enough for us. You know, you're not doing enough for us.
Mm.
Meanwhile, that booking agent was a big part of the reason why they even got the record deal in a way, because they were able to, the booking agent gave them that fan base platform, the platform to build the fan base in a way, and must have done a couple things right for even to achieve the record deal. And this was back in like the 90s. But anyway, so that guy, the promoter, the booking agent, said to him, he said, I got to tell you something. I understand your cockiness, and I understand, why you're doing this, but the same people you see on your way up are often the same people you see on your way down. That's supposed to be a humbling quote. That's supposed to give a person, hey, guess what? It's not just all uphill, from anywhere. You know what I mean? I mean, a lot of big groups, a lot of big artists say you make it to the top and you finally, get even a #1 hit. Top 10 is I think what we go for. But even you get a #1 hit, you made it to the top of the charts, like literally as big as you can get, as high as you can get. The #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. I think that's about the highest you can get. But you get it, then the pressure really starts, because it's not about having achieved it and all the things you did to achieve it and get there and get the hit record. Now you got to stay on the top. Now the pressure is really on, because staying on the top is so much harder than being or getting to the top. Yeah. And that expression kind of goes along all with that. So what it really means, though, is that stay humble, and don't forget, keep all your, bridges intact. Don't burn them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. These are important relationships, and everybody you meet on the way up, everybody you meet on the sideways, whatever you want to call it, you know what I mean? Build a strong relationship, embrace it all. And that leads into another really good quote that I don't know if you're going to make me bring it up as well.
Yeah, do it.
I mentioned off air, but I heard this quote kind of recently, and it's one I'm going to repeat every time I do anything like this, and do future things and, have conversation. But about the music industry, this is so important for artists. Your fans are not following you. You are following your fans. Mm-hmm. And that's been a very important side of things, much before the internet, much before, it just dates way back. You are following your fans. What that means is that you should be engaging with the people that are like us right now. You told me you met me because you really, you fanned the band and you really liked the music. You liked what was going on. And here we are engaging. This is so important. You know what I mean? And the relationships are so important, and I can't argue that enough. And a lot of people forget, when you work your way to the top or keep getting bigger and bigger and better opportunities, a lot of people gets to their head. And I can't say from true experience, exactly, but it gets in their head, and you think you're too cool for school. You think you don't need these people anymore. But a lot of people lost careers out of that attitude, and it's certainly the wrong one. There has been quite a few artists, I'm not going to name them, but there have been quite a few artists that have shunned their label in such a way, even though their label probably did help them get to the top in a way. And when you do that, you're really burning a relationship, because even though they might have helped you get to the top, that label, that is, and yeah, maybe they own too much of your worth, and maybe there's some disagreements there and whatnot. But there's a point where artists get so full of it that they even go far to say, I don't need my label, man. My label didn't do anything for me. You know what the label does after that? They don't drop you because you're a huge success for them. You're making them money. They don't drop you. They basically start to blacklist you in a way. They basically start to say, well, we won't promote your records. We don't care what you want to do in the future. We have control of your career for the next 5 years. So whatever we can choose to release your album or not. That's not your choice. That's our choice. That happens a lot. And I don't want to get into the control of labels and that whole conversation, to be brutally honest. But I mean, because I love labels. But at the end of the day, I it's interesting. Stay humble, keep the relationships alive. You are following your fans.
That story kind of hit with me on something. I just don't believe in kind of using people in any way, and anyone who's like helped our band along the way, like we want to get them involved. And
Yes.
so even with our professional relationships, the companies that Abe and I endorse, at the heart of it, we have developed relationships with the people behind these products, and we know that they're good people, and we're so proud to help their company grow or endorse their products. And
Exactly. And I like the
it's
way you put that, by the way.
yeah. Oh yeah. And then it's just like, I see on a lot of beginning musician forums, like, oh, how do I get this endorsement deal? Because it sounds so glamorous. Like, I got signed, I got this endorsement deal. And it's like, no, I mean, you shouldn't try to like reach out to companies to get like free shit. It's, there's no other way a lot of people approach these companies and they see it a mile away what you're trying to do. So it's just like, actually, have you been using their products for years, and are you interested in like the technology and building the relationships? You worked professionally building loops, working with people. What can you say about corporate or just professional relationships with artists?
I mean, you touched on something I'd love to talk about, because one of my mentors, another one of my mentors, he says something all the time, and every person that meets him, every artist especially that meets him, he will repeat this and reminds the artist that, because artists devalue themselves. We have a very problem. The way the music industry is kind of shaped for us in a lot of ways, there's a lot of devaluing going on, and part of that is saying that I'm looking for an endorsement. I want to be endorsed by Yamaha. No, you don't. You want to endorse Yamaha. You're an artist with value, and you will help their brand. You want to endorse Yamaha, not Yamaha endorsing you. That's what an endorsement is. It's your creativity and using their corporate product, you know what I mean? And you helping them to promote that product in any shape or form. So yes, it is something that you, I think, earn. I think it's it's like something you kind of build a relationship and ultimately earn. For example, our Robot Nature, Robot Nature, and even more exclusively, Deepak endorses Roland. Definitely one of the bigger ones that we focus on, and Deepak uses a lot of their products. And we're even supposed to play at the NAMM stage and all this stuff with them. But anyways, so it's like, I like to continue that expression of the artist endorses the corporation. And yes, artists needs those relationships, or these relationships, because at the end of the day, you want to make as much collaborations as possible. And I think corporations like a Yamaha or like a Roland, they are seeking the next us. You know what I mean? They're constantly seeking artists that are using their products and gear and are enjoying it and are creatively enjoying it and using them. So anyways, I wanted to throw that in there. But then, I mean, I'm definitely a promoter, I guess, if you will, of trying to build those kinds of relationships with corporations and products, and unique ones too, mom and pop brands too, all the above. There's a lot of opportunity out there. I mentioned NAMM. NAMM is a great opportunity for artists to engage with so many different music works, everything really, but corporations and products, and you should, if you get the chance, take advantage, go for it. So
thank you for those additional insights, because I really loved how you talked about how your mentor and manager was just saying that artists have this tendency to devalue themselves. And we actually talked about it in a previous session with Laura Valle, the singer, because she also does her own ventures in singing and songwriting and doing gigs. And we were just talking about, okay, when you do gigs, there's certain kind of promotional materials you set aside that can be free because you're giving them to like important industry people. I totally get that. But at gigs, like, don't be shy in terms of selling your CD, selling merch, purchasing download cards, even though it's like such a streaming world nowadays. But it's like, yeah, she was talking about it. It's like you have to, especially if you hired a roadie or extra musicians, you got to pay those musicians somehow, you know, unless you have additional personal resources. But and it's also sending a message to people like, you are supporting artists and art. And yeah, so who cares if they don't put CD players in cars anymore? You're buying the art.
Right.
And I was just telling her, like, yeah, I mean, if you're at a gig and you see people spending $50 on booze and drinks and whatever else, they can spend $10 to buy your album. So it shouldn't
And give it away. Yeah.
yeah. And speaking of that previous session I had with her, because she's also a vocal coach, she's taught hundreds of students, because she's been teaching for like internationally for like 20 years or something. And something that happens often is that parents would come in with their student, and I'm sure as a piano teacher you've had this maybe a few times. They come in and the parents always like, do they have talent? If they don't have talent, I want to find out within a month if they have talent. If they don't, I don't want to spend any more money on lessons. So, Richard, how, in your experience professionally or as a teacher or as your own creative person, how do you define talent?
Well, I'm a believer that everyone has talent. I know that's, everyone has different levels maybe of talent, or maybe there's different extremities that are captured early on versus build and develop, with hard work. But I really believe that everyone who is willing has talent. I have taught as young as 2 and as old as 85. You know what I mean? Doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, you have talent, you have ability. I believe in it. And I think talent's a funny word in a way, because what it really, I already made a blank statement, everyone has talent. Everyone has it. We're just human beings, floating in this crazy world that, for all we know, we're just programs, or in the dream state constantly. I don't know. But I mean, but the bottom line is that, I think that everyone has value. Everyone has an inner sort of ability. And if you're willing to find it, search for it, work for it, you know what I mean? Work at it, then you perhaps will even surprise yourself. From my own self point of view, I remember, like I mentioned before, I often strive to be like really, as good as I could be in a way. But it really was until I was about, I think, 13, 14, or even 15 years old that I felt like I hit like this pivotal moment, this click moment of things started to like I had a couple of friends that I grew up with, and they said, "Man, Rich, you got like really good." And I like, "Oh, thanks." I'm glad you said that. I really appreciate the kind words. And I don't want to sound like I'm boasting here. I worked hard for it. I really did. I mean, I really, devoted time in for it. And I am still and was very passionate about it. So sure, it's going to build, and everyone can find that. That's talent. Talent is finding what you love, finding what you're passionate about. And not everyone does find that. Some people get stuck in a endless loop of like, I don't know, life boredom, or I don't want to go as far to say depression in a way, but like if you believe what I'm saying, then it's basically believing in yourself. Everyone has what I guess this word talent, you know what I mean? It's all it really is to me is finding one's inner passion, I guess, if I could put a sort of a definition on it. And that's, I don't know if that helps define it, but that's like what talent is to me. It's finding passion. It's finding, that's what speaks to people. Like, they see that you care, chances are they're going to care that you care, And so it's not about how good you are, how fast you can move, or how high a level you can play, even classically, Rachmaninoff, and so on. It's not even about that. It's about how you express what you are playing, and that you can express the the simplest of forms of music in a very passionate way, and people will be like, wow, I never heard it that way. Thank you, you know? So
Oh. Beautifully put. No, that was great. I love that. Oh my goodness. And speaking of talent, you yourself are managing another artist. Segue into that. So, if you don't mind, talking a little bit about that and how, because I looked at that person's Instagram. I was trying to like find some singing or playing samples. I couldn't find any. So
oh yeah.
if you can like let us know about this next act, how you evaluated this person's talent, please.
Sure. Well, I was very, very blessed to meet this young female, and she comes from a background in acting. She was a star of a television show on Nickelodeon called Make It Pop. Her name's Erica Tam, and she blew me away. I was introduced to her as a piano teacher, and she told me, I always ask my students on the very first day, what are some of your goals? What do you want to do with this? If you have, if you do have them. And for her, it was, I want to be able to accompany myself. I want to be an artist now. A lot of the roles that I played on television, they were artist-based roles. I was literally, I don't want to use the word faking, but I was faking as a pop artist. I was popular on the show. I was a pop artist on the show. But in real life, I actually want to be a pop artist. So I was like,
she plays piano and approached you as a piano teacher.
She played piano. She played piano
okay.
by ear. She'd already figured things out. She'd never taken lessons before.
Okay.
I want to take a couple roads with you. At the time, I said I want a little bit of this road. We're not going to go down the road of learning how to read music, and only because she was a little bit older when I met her. She was already in her upper teenage years, and I knew what she was trying to do. That's what's important to me from a student standpoint, or teacher-student standpoint or relationship. It's important to embrace what the student wants. So
yes.
For her, I understood what she wanted, and I wanted to embrace that. And it goes back to music theory and talent. Not talent, music theory and the language, and being able to use that and realize what you like. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times what that music theory will introduce is it'll influence you and make you realize what you actually enjoy putting together. And for her case, it was actually, I don't want to drop too much of an educational bomb, but for her case, it was actually when she discovered harmonic minor, that was just a mind-opening thing for her. She started writing music with a little bit of that tone and that part of the music theory. And I'm so glad, because that was our goals. But I met her and I said to her right off the bat, I said, wow, I'm talking to a pop star right now. I'm talking to a future, big star right now. And I reminded her of that every time I saw her. And I expressed to her I really did want to get involved with her career if she let me. You know what I mean? I wanted to introduce her to my manager, who I trusted and put faith into a career or an artist's career. And I wanted her to understand why it's why it could be important to even utilize maybe our relationship if you're willing, because she has connections. She comes from, TV background and everything like that. She could have probably built some things and gone different directions. But I knew that if she let ultimately my partner, Cindy, in this project especially, I knew that she let us, sort of into her life from a professional standpoint. I felt like we could really pave the way and open up a lot of doors for her. And that's what we're doing. And it's been really incredible. I mean, I would say, watch out for Erica Tam. She's going to be a name you recognize, and if not already because of some of her background, but like I think she wants to be recognized for music and her musical talent and ability. Or let me restate that, her musical passion. And that is, I want to help her get there. I really, really do, and I'm glad to be working with her. It's really an amazing journey. We're working with some really top guys. I won't mention names necessarily, but but there's producers, songwriters, working with some really, really well established, already kind of had hits in their own rights, and they love her. And one thing I will say this about her specifically, even though this is the first artist I've actually taken on as a managerial role. One thing I can say is that in the industry, you get a lot of no's. No. And you're seeking the yeses. You know what I mean? The people that believe in you, people that can help you or offer you, whatever whatever the yeses. You always start seeking out the yeses. And for her, it's just been a lot of consistent yeses, and we haven't gotten a lot of those. And I'm excited. I'm really am excited to be, to see where that's going to go. We got some plans. So yeah.
Oh man, awesome. So I guess you're helping facilitate with her putting together the songs and recording them. And is that kind of what's going on right now?
Yeah,
Or?
a little bit of everything, in that way. We're helping her find her way. I mean, she's an artist. She gets to make her own decisions. We give her that power by all means, because like I said, artists have the power. They do. And we want her to continue to have that. We want to help guide her in any way possible, and whatever we can bring to the table, help find herself as an artist right now, to create the song she wants to create and put out the song she wants to put out, because she hasn't released any music beyond the studio, meaning like a TV production studio. There's been a couple things released under her name, but she has never released anything on a solo project or even released anything majorly under a major label. And she wants to. Before we just jump right in and release something kind of randomly, she wanted to find her thing, what she could be good at. And so we've experimented with different aspects of what we felt right off the bat, and what she felt, what she communicated to us right off the bat was a good direction to head down towards. And for her, it's a little bit of a mix of like, a good example would be like an Ariana Grande, which kind of has a little bit of this urban side, but a little bit, but certainly R&B, and certainly just, and even going as far as to say a Billie Eilish too, a little bit of that creative side as well. She kind of has that in her. So yeah, we just want to help her continue to pave the way of what she's going to be, what she's going to do creatively and of course professionally, because she knows what it's like to work in the industry in a bit, in kind of a small sense, and I mean small in the musical sense, but of course the TV film background, she has an incredible background with that, and she definitely knows what it's like to be professional. But like I said, she really impresses the heck out of me, and I'm just thrilled to be working with her. So
that's great. It sounds like you are coming full circle in terms of someone. The way Mr. Staub, your piano teacher, has nurtured you and your vision, and you're kind of, paying it forward and doing that with Erica. People can start following her right away.
Yes.
It's at Erica Tam, at ErikaTham. And and while we're at it, do you mind shouting out your socials for you and your band and anyone else affiliated with you would like?
Sure. I have a product on the side called I call it ET MIDI Pack, Everything Theory MIDI Pack. Got that surname, and then so that's at ET MIDI Pack, which is on like Instagram and some of the other socials. And then there's there's everythingtheory.com for that one. As far as the band goes, we've been talking about it. It's Robot Nature, everything Robot Nature, at Robot Nature Music, robotnature.com. You can definitely find a lot of cool backstory there, and check out the band. Then as far as the management goes, well, I mentioned my partner Sydney in that, and we've just mentioned Erica Tam, so you already plugged her, and that's that pretty much plugs it all. Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, I believe like we had such a great conversation. Beginning, intermediate, even advanced musicians are gonna get a lot out of this, and I just, Richard, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I think this is great. It's going to help a lot of people.
Well, I really appreciate you, Joanna. Thanks for having me and everything like that.
Of course.
And yeah, appreciate it.
Welcome to our surprise segment. Now it's time for a visit from Madam Pepe.
Welcome to Tarot Time. You can call to me Madam Pepe. I am in this place to show you the good fortunes of our guests. What I do, I summon informations combined with cards so that you and our guests can receive learnings. Okay? Let's go. Okay, I am going to shuffle now. Now we are looking for some intuitions for Richard Parizer. Okay, Richard. Let's see what we can find for you. What is this? Oh, the Knight of Wands. Wow, what a great card. Well, what is that to mean? What I am looking at here is that there is a knight. He's on a horse. The horse is leaping up and in action, but it looks like the knight is holding the wand and his body is calm. He is in control. Okay, he's calm. He's wearing a yellow cloak which has a salamander on it, and a black and yellow salamander is a fire salamander. So what this is saying is that you are taking action. You have a lot of fire and desire in your heart, but you are mature and you are staying calm and you're in control. So I very much like this card for you, Richard. It looks just like you. Okay, so very little people have such talent for playing keyboards, using technology, and using your wisdom and maturity and professionalism. So I want to suggest to you, if you're listening, Richard, is just to keep going and doing what you're doing, and eventually, if you haven't found it yet, that you will hit and reach the prosperity and contentment your heart desires. Okay. Okay, that's it. Well, I enjoy to bring you good news and fortunes. Thank you very much for visiting, Madam Pepe. Okay, that's it. No more. See you soon. Bye now.
robotnature.com.
Now it's time for our after show. This is where my bandmate Ybra and I usually talk about the recent episode or any other random happenings in our band. All right. Welcome to the Pepe and Ybra after show. We just did a virtual performance at USC for the Apasa Cultural Art Expo. We played a couple songs, Something Unspoken and Secret of Mania acoustic. Then we got to go into breakout rooms, and they served as like little virtual booths where students can pop in, ask a few questions. And we had a lot of students come in who were very attentive and respectful. So it was overall like good event, and kind of what we're able to do in this pandemic. What'd you think of it, Abe?
Thought it was cool.
Abe had a lot of good things to say. He talked about his background in music. The demographic was it's Asian Pacific American students. That's the association. And so there's a lot of Asian students in there in their early 20s. Most of them are undergrad. They're at the time of their life where they have these pressures and expectations from parents and society to be a certain way, and do certain things and get into certain professions. And did you have any expectations from your dad?
No. They've never told me anything on what they wanted me to do, or even hinted, study this or do that. Because they knew, when you're playing drums at fourth grade, and I was playing good. I could play, not like a beginner. I could play. I used to do assemblies for my elementary school. They would have the whole school go in the auditorium.
Yeah.
I'd bring my drums in there and jam for them. Just me. So I was able to do drum solos, all of that, So they just let me roll with the music because they believed in me, and I don't know if I want to get into that. I had some chances when I was really young. You don't even know about it.
Mm-hmm. What?
My aunt set up an audition for me to go meet a very, very big Latin guy that was impressed with what he was told about me. And I wouldn't go without the guy that I first started playing music with, the guitar player guy.
Mm-hmm. The two-piece band.
Yeah, he's the one that got me into music. And I said I wouldn't go without him. My aunt said it has nothing to do with him. It's not for him. and he just wants to hear you play drums. They had a drum set there for me.
Yeah.
He was somebody really big. I think, I want to say René Toussaint, who was real big at the time. He was like a Tito Puentes kind of guy. And I never went. So that could have been an opening for me to actually get connected in music. How sometimes they'll push young kids that can play at a young age and play professional already, and maybe get hooked up with something, but I never went. So
Why did you feel like you were being not loyal to your friend?
yeah, well, to my bandmate, he's the one that got me in music, and kind of got me started, and I just felt we were a team, and I just didn't feel like going without him. I should have, because, that might have been my break at a very, very young age to, sometimes you only get one break in life. That could have been it. I don't know. I've had other things I didn't do. I told you about the motels.
Soundgarden.
The motels, I spoke with Martha Davis on the phone. And she told me she's got a new kind of music she's coming out with called New Wave. I'm like. And at the time I was playing with John Nelson, former guitarist of Eddie Money, and I'm thinking, like, this guy's already been big. Why would I want to quit? And John is really crazy. John, I don't know if I told you that. John used to date her. He knew her. He even told me, Abe, it's cool with me, man. Go check it out. She's really good. And I said, no, man, I want to stick with you because I like his songs. John wrote a lot like Eddie Money. I wouldn't even doubt if Eddie, used some of his songs. And he sang really good. He could sing like Eddie Money, kind of like, it was in that bag. And I never went, which was a huge mistake because if I would have made the audition, I loved the motels. I just loved the motels. And they made it. 8 months later, there used to be a magazine called The BAM. I don't know if you ever remember that. The BAM. It was huge. It's kind of like Rolling Stone or something. It was a music magazine. And 8 months later, I see this big full-page thing, the motels and whatever their hit was. I forgot their first hit.
Was it Only the Lonely?
No, it was another one before. Okay. Only the Lonely was the one I really love. I just adore that song. But anyway, I could have kicked myself in the ass 100 times for that one.
Yeah.
And the thing with John Nelson fell apart because he's the one that I went in the studio. He loved the way I played drums. He even brought Eddie Money's bass player to jam with me, and I heard them talking. What do you think of this kid? The bass player said, this kid can play, man. He's got a lot of heart, a lot of feel. You're doing good with him, Stick with him. So I'm like, all right, I'm in with John Nelson. Then he took me in the studio. I thought we were going to play live, and here he's got this pre-recorded music all done to a click. And I had never played with a click. And I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
They tried and they tried. Finally, the producer, he's some famous dude, he goes, hey, man, I know he's a good drummer. I heard him warm up. When they mic you up, you warm up.
Yeah.
But he can't do this recording session. It needs to be someone that can play to the click.
Yeah.
And John just apologized to him and told me, sorry, Abe, it didn't work. And then actually he lost interest in me after that. I guess he thought I wasn't a good enough professional yet, even though I had chops. I wasn't, rounded off enough to pull that one off. And man, that I came home. I think I bought the Alesis because I knew it had pre-recorded music, and it had blues, jazz, funk, rock, all this different kind of stuff with no drums, all done to a click. And I locked myself in this room, and at first I couldn't do it. And I kept listening to the songs, practicing, before and I think it took 2 weeks. Not every day, but I did it a lot. And in 2 weeks, boom, I had it down. And then I was able to do it, but John Nelson moved on.
You know, um, that's a shame, because playing to a click, while it's applicable if you want to be a studio session musician as a profession, that's absolutely vital, being able to play with a click. However, in terms of being an overall good performer, when you perform live,
No,
some people play with backing tracks, so you kind of do need to have that steady meter, and be able to do that. But for the most part, if you're playing rock music that has those ebbs and flows, that has changes, you probably don't need to learn how to, it's okay, play to a click. And so it just seemed a little unfortunate. And they should have kind of gave you a heads up.
Yeah,
I
didn't
called
know.
you, a couple weeks ahead, and just be
Yeah.
like, hey man, by
Yeah.
the way, we play to, he plays on with backing tracks live, I'll play the click, and then you would have at least saved some face trying to prepare, so that in those kind of situations, it's all about preparation. And or you can also have called and been like, are you playing to a click? I mean,
No, I didn't even. You want to know something?
What?
I didn't even think of it because I was still pretty young, and I had no clue. Really, I've heard of a metronome, but I had no clue about stuff like that, and I had no clue. I don't know why John didn't tell me that there was some pre-recorded music.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they didn't like the drummer. What they
Yeah.
did is they took him out,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted me to play on it. Now it's funny, kind of just throw this in. Once I learned how to do it, I got hired to do that once, that exact thing, and I nailed it. I nailed it.
Awesome.
But I was prepared.
Yeah.
I mean, I was told, okay, we didn't like the drum tracks, but it's all pre-recorded with the other instruments with a click track. You have to be right on with it. I said, bring it, man. Let's do it. And sure enough, I record I like to record quick. I don't like to sit there and do
Yeah.
a gazillion, because I lose my mojo, my vibe when I do that.
Mhm.
It's got to be 1, 2, or 3 takes for me to have my groove, my feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone's different. When I do vocals, I've learned that per song, per session, I max out at 5 takes. And after that, it's just not even worth it to keep going, because then you just sound
5's
worse.
even a lot for me. If we're not
Yeah.
punching in, if we're punching in, it's okay.
Yeah. No, I like to start from the top,
Oh, no.
or from a certain section. It depends, I know a lot of professional recordings, they comp the choruses, they copy paste the choruses among all the choruses, take chorus 1 and they make it all the same, and they put it to the second chorus and the third chorus. But it depends. But yeah, you said you had another audition story you want to share.
Then later on in life, it's just another break that I never even tried. I was in another band that I wanted to be faithful to, but I think it was in a recycler. I saw an ad from Soundgarden. They weren't famous. I didn't know who they were.
They were called Soundgarden by then?
Pretty sure.
Yeah.
Pretty sure. Yeah, because how else would I know? Yeah, it was Soundgarden. And they were telling me they're from Washington or Seattle or something like that.
Yeah.
And I made the audition. I think I spoke to the lead vocalist. What's his name?
Chris Cornell?
Yeah. And I made the audition. Of course, I didn't tell my band. And
Did you play?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, because what happened is, me, my inner me started feeling guilty, like, oh, you're two-timing your band. You're not being loyal. And I'm like, okay. And I knew, that's when I knew Eddie Gomez, that guy that I know that's been in the business.
Mm-hmm.
He knew about, so he goes, hey, man, they're a good band. He goes, you should check it out, Abe. You should go.
Yeah.
I go, yeah, but I want to be loyal. I was in a band called Fortress of Solitude, FOS. I wanted to be loyal to them, which was another mistake. And so I called off the audition. This is funny. And then I had second thoughts. A week later, I call them up again. And Chris Cornell's, it's that same dude, man, that canceled out on us. And he was, I think, talking to the guitar player guy, the one with the big beard. Because I kind of know his voice, too.
Yeah.
And he said, well, hope you don't flake out again on us. And he told me, and I go, no, man, I'm going to show up this time. You sure? You sure you're not going to be telling me all this stuff about your other band? I go, no, man. And sure enough, there I go again. And then he goes, it's that dude again. He goes, hey, man, I'm going to let you go. You're wasting our time. I go, okay, man. And that was it. And same thing.
Yeah.
I think it was the BAM, the same thing. There was this huge article about them. I forgot what their first hit was. It was like this really hard rock song.
Was it Spoon Man?
No, it was a real hard rock, like Black Sabbath kind of song. It was really good song. And both of those bands, my drumming style would have fit really good with them because it's all about style.
Yeah.
It's not like how good you are. It's like your style vibes with them and your personality does. You got a good chance of making it.
Yeah.
And did you find the song?
Oh, no, I wasn't looking for that.
I think it's Bad Motor or something.
Okay. I'll look it up.
Yeah, look it up. Bad Motor something. It was a hard, like a lot Black Sabbath with
first Soundgarden hit.
We'll see.
Hunted Down.
Here's a summary from Wikipedia.
Okay, anyways, shut up. Okay.
I don't remember that song. I thought it was Bad Motor or something.
Yeah.
Give me a don't. It's real heavy like that.
That's a funny story.
Yeah, funny for like an idiot like me that missed 2 opportunities.
Yeah. Well, I think you're just you have a conscience.
Yeah.
You have this thing where you don't want to abandon people. And that's a good thing. Loyalty, not a lot of people are loyal, so it's good to have that. So that about wraps it up for this after show of Pepe and Ybra. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen and choosing our podcast. It really means a lot. If you enjoy this, subscribe on YouTube, give it 5 stars, and leave a good review on Apple Podcast. Support us on Patreon, and connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. For those of you who are also following our band, Glass Spirits, check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Glass Spirits. On our next episode, we're going to have singer-songwriter and vocal coach Laura S. Valle. She talks about her experience as an international musician, being a vocal coach for hundreds of students, and will even have a snippet of her teaching style. It's going to be a great episode, so definitely stay tuned to check it out. Again, please rate and review our podcast. And if you want to keep our podcast, Pepe and Ybra, going, or support our band, Glass Spirits, please join our Patreon. For just $5, $3, or even $1 a month, you can help keep us afloat. Our band name, Glass Spirits, is one word, spelled GLASSPIRITS. The music you hear on this episode is our podcast theme song. It's an original song by our band Glass Spirits called Something Unspoken. You can download Something Unspoken from all major retailers or stream it on Spotify. Now, I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of our song, Something Unspoken. Again, thanks for tuning in, and see you next time on Pepe and Ybra.